What's up, my Nimbugs? It's your boy Josh, and I have Swolelax here, and it's December, which means it's time to talk about all the new Frost cards that have been added into the Elestrals app for the new competitive season.
Yep, super excited to go over a few of them. We had them revealed as part of the Advent calendar. They're going to be revealing one every single day of some new Elestrals surprise, and our first surprise was a type of card inside of Elestrals that is near and dear to both of our hearts, the Bears. Got some new bear cards to discuss.
Absolutely. And I think we want to be talking about the competitive viability of the Bears. Do they fix the problems that the Bears had before? Is Bears going to be a new meta? Are they going to be a new tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 deck? Let's get into the brand new ice cards and what they do. The first one's going to be Ursicle. And this is the first iteration of a card that searches specifically a subtype. So when you use normal cast as Ursicle, you're going to be able to search for any Ursa, Elestral, or Rune and add it to your hand.
Yeah, the rune part's also really important with Ursicle because there's now a new stadium rune that comes with the bears called Ursaden too. I'm excited for this card, adding a bit of consistency to the strategy. I think that's pretty cool.
Absolutely. And I think that this card also opens the door for future card design as well. Adding subtypes to runes and field spells I think is really interesting. So even if this card isn't super competitive, it opens the door for more card design.
And the next one we have is Urscoat, which I like this guy's design a lot. I like this little jacket in the winter.
Absolutely.
He's so cute.
Absolutely.
That's one thing I love about the bears over probably anything else, is they're just so dang cute. Urscoat kind of works as a defensive tool for the deck. When Urscoat is attacked and during the damage step, you can return an attacking Elestral to the owner's hand.
I think there's also a lot of combo potential with this too, being able to summon this off of your Ursicle. Abominursa I think is a really interesting design too. He is just a 3/1, but for every other Ursa Elestral on your field, he's going to get +2 attack. So if you summon this again off of like an Ursicle or an Urscout, and then you have another Elestral on the field, this thing's going to be a 5, which has a decent amount of attack.
Yeah, and if not trying to keep the little guys on the field, they do have a few larger Elestrals that they can call out. The new one being Glaciursa, which is their new 3-drop ice Elestral. Glaciursa is a 14 attack, 4 defense body, and they added a new keyword, a new couple keywords to this card, one of them being piercing. Big new one is its second effect, which is when this Glaciursa enters a battle with an Elestral, you can suppress that Elestral. Suppress being the new kind of negate when Glaciursa attacks into something like, let's say, for example, Foamy or even an Urscout, that Elestral now cannot float because its effects were negated on the field when Glaciursa attacked.
The last card that kind of brings this whole archetype together is the new field spell that they've given for Ursas, which is Ursaden, which is going to give all of your Ursa Elestrals +1 to both their attack and their defense. Again, we've talked about how all the bears are very small. Giving them that extra boost is very, very helpful. The other half of this effect I'm not super sold on because it's very expensive, is the fact that you can disenchant 4 of anything to summon an Ursa from your deck. So you can even cheat out your boss monsters like the new Glaciursa or Majursa. The other thing that's really nice about this card too is it's a very nice Nexus bank that you can combo with other cards that you were playing in Bears previously, like Kinleo.
So with all the new support to Bears, Josh, we're here to truly discuss the important thing. Are Bears good?
No.
Yeah, short answer, no. More complicated answer,
So you heard my very emphatic no about the viability of these cards, and that's mainly due to their conflicting design. One of the main power cards in the deck is Ursicle, being able to summon any of your Ursa cards from the deck, but it's so small that it can't put forth any pressure. Like, we all know of a card like Viserys, which is one of the most powerful cards in the game right now in base set 1, but it's also powerful because it has 5 attack, not 3. And Ursaden also doesn't fix that issue by only giving it 1 extra attack.
4s are pretty common inside this game. You have Sparkit, Elechick, even Toxion is a 4. And not even outside the Thunder cards, there's other bigger bodies like Sorlet that are pretty common. And so what is Ursicle really getting over but something like a P-Gust or an attack position Aster Rabbit, which is a pretty rare occurrence.
And I think the other issue with that too is that the new bears, aside from Abominursa, are all defensive. or Ursicle can only be used on normal cast, so you can't float into a searcher either.
Right, which honestly, that would be extremely powerful. Like having Urscout not only represent either an extra body that is offensively, threatening, something like Abominursa or Ursier, it also could be a consistency booster. That's insane. I think that would be a lot better.
In theory, Ice is supposed to do something, and that's the problem, is that we can't really figure out what the Ice Bears are meant to accomplish to fill in the gaps, because most of them are still defensive.
Well, and on top of that too, like you said, Abominursa is a pretty good powerhouse for the deck, but when you think about how Abominursa would play, it's like, okay, right, it's a 5, but given you have another Ursa on the board, so that means most likely you're going to have an Ursier in that interaction. So now you're not only your Ursier has to connect, but instead of going into another Ursier, in which now you can gain even more advantage, you are going into Abominursa, which is just a big body.
These bears don't fix the issue of playing into back row, which most decks are playing anywhere between 10 to 15 counter runes. These aren't fixing that problem by any means.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it kind of goes back to what you were saying about how the bears were initially designed to be something like an offensive pressure, but because they're so small, even if I attack, right? Let's say, for example, an Ursier is trying to connect, or God forbid, an Urscout's trying to connect, nightmare scenario. They're both like a 3 and a 1. So I could just let an attack go through and on my turn save my key counter rune for when I actually need it. Those things can be added by almost anything that can be normal cast. So I'm not in any immediate danger when I see something like a bear go down. But however, Urscout and Urscoat both hit the field in defense. They are honestly a little bit threatening, just because now I have to actually think about how I'm going to approach the board.
When you're playing bears, you are going to be making a lot of concessions in your deck building just to play cute bear cards.
And honestly, that's the most important part.
It's the best sacrifice you could be making.
True, very true. Bears best deck, baby. So let's go over the pros and the cons for bears. So pros. The Nexus is really good as a mechanic. Like we said, Kinleo can be played natively inside of Fire Strategy, and the bears play well with it. And the new Ursaden card plays really well to it as well. Like you said, you can Kinleo onto the Ursaden, and then now you have enough fuel from your Ursaden to bring out something huge like Majursa or Glaciursa.
And the fact that you can have a reason to play those cards is really nice, where before it was really difficult to get out Majursa in the first place. On top of this too, one of the big pros is the fact that this deck is very consistent. You're going to be playing a lot of searchers and cards that float into one another, so you're never going to have an issue with bricking.
Yeah, another big pro to the deck at the expense of more offensive pressure is really good defensive tools. Things like Urscout and Urscoat, the new bear card, allow a little bit of flexibility and a little bit of stall if you find yourself in a hard place. And then I think for the pros as a whole, listen, the most important parts is that this deck suffers from a massive case of FCNS, aka they're fun, they're cute, they're neat, and they're sweet. They're adorable. These are some of the most adorable cards inside of the entire game, I'd argue. They can go toe-to-toe with Nimbug in terms of cuteness, Ugh, kind of shuddered saying that a little bit.
As much as we love the pros for this deck, the cons are huge red flags with this deck if you're looking to play it. One, it's slow. It's going to get out-tempoed very, very quickly, especially with the fact that it doesn't have a whole lot of offensive pressure. Even with the new cards like Abominursa and Ursier, you're going to have a lot of issues breaking your opponent's board. On top of the fact that none of the new cards actually help you play into back row. The deck, too, because it swarms so much, is going to be very weak to Laurels, which is very present in tournaments in the metagame because of decks like Earth Beatdown and Thunder Nexus, which use a lot of divine runes. I think the last huge con about this deck too, now that they have split up the deck into 2 different spirit types, is now your spirit math is going to be very funky, especially because you're going to have to play removal cards like Earthquake and Laurels, as well as Tsunamis to compete with everything. So your spirit counts are going to be a really weird mishmash of 4 different colors.
I can definitely see a world in which if they expand upon the different spirit types in the game, with Ursas specifically, now we're having to compete with what is the best Ursa cards in the game, and that can get really interesting, I'll put it that way, with trying to figure out if you're going to be playing the fire half, the ice half, the water half, so on and so on.
Yeah.
And we haven't even seen other bear types other than fire and ice so far, but just the fact that they could also be in the other spirit types is really cool. Don't get me wrong. I'd love to see an electric or a water bear.
You already know I could see a grizzly bear be an earth.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God, that's so cool.
Wouldn't that be sick?
Wait a minute. Okay, now we're back on the pros. There's so many cool different ways you could build that. God, that's sick. And if you're at all curious on how to play bears or what to build with the new bear cards, we've got an example list for you where, we decided to play a mix-up of the older bears and some of the new bears that we thought would synergize well. We did decide to omit the big bads of Glaciursa and Madursa, but we included some extra text to hopefully help out the strategy.
Absolutely. So even though we're not playing the big bad bears, we still are going to be playing an Ursaden, specifically because we do want that buff. We want that attack and defense boost, and it's also just a nice thing to Nexus to in case you do want to spend that 4 to summon another bear from the deck. We're also playing cards like Viscerus, which unfortunately is just better Ursier, but you can also enchant the new Viscerus that you summon off of Viscerus as Nexus material for your Kinleo.
No, exactly. And one of the biggest things that Kinleo can also synergize well with is Hephaestus, which is an artifact searcher, and we're deciding to go with Necklace of Harmonia. So we're also running 2 copies of Ursicle for the consistency boost. Once again, can search out any of the Ursa cards, including the Ursaden, which is kind of nice, adds a little bit more consistency where otherwise a small Tuga would be, and the 1 copy of Abominursa. This card is very strong, don't get us wrong, but you're probably only going to be getting this off of its normal cast or a special cast off of something like Urscoat, and very rarely Ursier.
Adding on to more of the text that we've talked about too, this deck is going to have issues with dealing with your opponent's Elestrals, so we are electing to play the 3 Resting on the Laurels and 2 Earthquake to help deal with problematic Elestrals.
Yeah, and so, this is a fairly standard bear list, I would say. If you really, really, really wanted to squeeze in the big bear cards, you could cut a copy of Laurels, you could cut a copy of Viscerus, build to your preference, salt to taste. But I think for our likeness, this is a pretty good way to integrate the new bear cards, the new ice bears, with the existing fire bear strategy inside of Elestrals. Pretty cool overall. Again, I am excited to see where they can take bears even with these new cards. What do future sets and packs hold for the bears? I'm excited to see.
I think what I'm really interested to is to see if they're competitively viable and if there's something that we missed, because these are going to be legal on the 16th for the next remote app tournament.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah, which I am curious at all if people are going to be rolling up with bears.
I mean, realistically, we've been in the same meta for a year and a half. I think a lot of people are going to be looking to mix it up and try out the new stuff.
Yeah, and worst case scenario, everyone just brings bears, and that means bears wins a tournament. So that's great.
I'm not complaining there. If everybody rocks up with bears, I mean, bears is going to win.
Absolutely. That's yeah. That's copium math, right? We're just like convincing ourselves that
everybody will everyone will play bears.
Yeah, let's go. So, Josh, any final thoughts on the bears? Anything else you want to talk about?
Again, they're just super fun. I know I'm probably going to end up playing them at the tournament just because I want to shake things up and I want to try out the new cards. Again, not super competitively viable, but they're probably one of the most fun decks to play in the game right now.
I think that pretty much sums it up entirely. Out of the pros and cons we've talked about today, let us know what your opinions are of the bears down below in the comments. If you want to see more from us here at Elestronauts, make sure to like and subscribe. But with that being said, I've been Swolelax.
And I've been Josh.
And we'll see you later. Peace out.
Yep. Peace.